The United Nations estimates that since 1998, 200,000 women and girls have been raped. 5 million people have died, the majority because of lack of access to basic medicine, lack of access to food, and more than 2 million people today, as we speak, are still displaced from their homes, unable to return home because they are fearful of being killed, of being raped, and of having other atrocities happen to them. It is one of the worst humanitarian crises in the world today. It is the deadliest war in the world today. Congo's conflict comes out of the genocide in Rwanda in 1994, when close to 1 million moderate Hutu and Tutsi were killed. And that conflict, of course, spilled over into Congo, which borders Rwanda. Congo's conflict is also about greed. It's about minerals. It's about Congo's immense mineral wealth. Congo is one of those countries that has everything. It has gold, it has copper, it has cobalt, it has uranium, you name it, Congo has it. And it, of course, part of its ongoing conflict has been the desire by different armed groups and neighboring countries to benefit, to get rich, to make money from those particular minerals. So here is a country that throughout its history has been badly governed, has not had real democracy, has rarely been able to vote for its leaders, and has been used as a country where its minerals have either funded development in Europe or in Belgium during its colonial days, or a corrupt dictator such as Mobutu Sese Seko. And all of those components, so from ongoing security issues in the region, the after effects of the Rwandan genocide, greed and minerals, is all part of Congo's story. One of the worst places in the world to be a woman or a girl. And one of my recent trips to Congo, I met up with a young girl who was 15 years old, who was holding a small child in her arm, who was the product of rape. And she had been kicked out of her home. She had been violently raped for 3 months by one of the rebel groups known as the FDLR, who are a Rwandan Hutu rebel group. And she had been held for 3 months in a hole in the ground, in a pit, naked, that she could not climb out of. And every day another combatant would come and rape her. She was only 15. She realized at one stage that she had fallen pregnant and begged them to let her out, begged them to feed her. She was losing weight rapidly. They didn't believe her initially. And then they killed her best friend who was in the pit with her. There were 2 of them. And she had to stay in that pit with the body for 6 weeks, unable to climb out of the pit, knowing that she was pregnant and still being raped day in, day out. She told me this story with such composure, without any emotion. Her only emotion was that she kept scrunching her hands and scrunching her toes as she attempted to control herself to tell her story. And her grace, her fortitude, her courage was extraordinary. And she was not allowed to go back to her home because she had a child born of rape. Her parents kicked her out of the home. And she is one of Congo's stories. And there are so many more like that. And this happens every day, every month, every year in Congo. And I'd like to say that over the 11 years, I've seen it get better, that I've seen change. And I have seen some change, but it isn't getting better. And last year was not only a year where rape continued. Rape in Eastern Congo increased in 2009. It didn't decrease, it increased. And when I saw those statistics, my heart just sank. And all I could think about was this young woman and how many more of these young girls do we need before the world wakes up. We as consumers in the West are part of Congo's story now. When we buy mobile phones, when we buy laptop computers, when we use our Blackberries, to a certain extent we have become part of that story. The gold ring on our finger, the gold chain around our neck. That's not to say that every single mobile phone will have commodities in it or minerals in it that come from Congo. But the reality in today's globalized world is that we don't know it doesn't. Companies are not adequately checking their supply chains. They're not checking where the minerals come from, and they're not ensuring that it doesn't come from a place in Congo where a warlord is forcing people at gunpoint to work in the mines, where they're raping women who are refusing to work in the mines. That is now also part of Congo's story. I think we as consumers have to be much more discerning. We must ask the questions when we buy our laptop computers, when we buy the gold ring. How do we know that that gold ring or that mobile phone does not contain minerals coming from Congo? And at the moment, nobody can say, hand on heart, this is definitely the case, because our globalized international world isn't checking adequately where the commodities come from. And I think we need to care. We need to care when there's a war in the world where 5 million people have died. We should be shocked. We should be outraged. We should be marching in the streets. Why isn't there more talk about Congo? And I think just as human beings, when that kind of destruction, of death, that kind of horror is happening in our lifetime, on our watch, we should be paying more attention to it.